I guess it probably doesn't need to be said that it is March 15th, and at this point in time, we have no Battle Pass, we have no Season 1, and I think that is becoming a little bit problematic for me, at least specifically me, because I'm not necessarily bored of the game yet, but I see where this game will get boring. And I think that has something to do with the fact of just how the natural life cycle of a battle royale will go. There are some things you can't get over just in a game genre, and sometimes you drop in, and sometimes you get nothing, and sometimes you get killed quickly. Sometimes you don't get good loot. Sometimes just the random luck of the draw, the way things go. With battle royales can get very frustrating. This person has no gun, and I'm spending all of my ammo chasing them down. So like things like this can happen where you're just like, oh well, yeah, that's just shit aim. You know what I mean? But when battle royales lives are the life of your battle royale is so precious that missing like that and using all your ammo like that can really ruin the rest of like the 20-minute experience. It didn't in this match. But that is something that just the general life cycle of battle royale gets old. And then I think this game specifically, there are legends that are just like not fun. There are legends that you just can't use. Gibraltar comes to mind. He's really big. He's really slow, and you don't get that much advantage out of the disadvantage that he brings you. And so just out of all like, oh well, there's only a couple legends that are really only only a couple of them that are kind of exceptional, and so or worth using, and so I think that that's something that'll also get a little bit old as the game goes on. So I think we're just kind of waiting. At least me, I'm just kind of waiting for the new season, the new battle pass, because I think that'll add a lot more excitement to the game. I also think that's when there is a bunch of new legends coming out according to the leaks. So I think that'll bring a lot of breadth to the game. I also think it's going to be one of those things where it will fundamentally change the game. Like I was saying, just like the one thing that I was saying earlier, where when the Battle Pass comes out, it'll be a lot more refreshing. It'll change the game. It'll make things different and more fun. That'll also, eventually be the same thing that does the game in, so to say. Eventually that'll be the thing that makes, oh, this game is not what I first started playing when I first started. When I first started playing Fortnite, it was the beginning of season 3, and it was like a completely different time than it is right now in Fortnite. Right now I can't stand Fortnite, but I had a lot of fun playing it in the beginning of season 3 because of how different it was and how different the player base was and how different the mechanics of the game were. So this will happen to this game eventually at some point in time. But I don't know. Considering the people that made it, I don't know why. I have a lot of trust in these people since they made a game that I really liked 10 years ago, or I guess 12 years ago now at this point. But yeah, it's something to think about. But I didn't realize I even had that much to talk about when it came to when it came to talk about the battle pass. But the real thing that I really wanted to talk about was I remember in 2011 I made this video. I was a sophomore in high school, and I made this video. It was like spring break 2011 coming soon, or something like that. And it was basically I made this video. I went to go visit my sister, who still lived in Hawaii at the time. I used to live in Hawaii. I don't anymore. I didn't then. She doesn't live there anymore now anyway. And so I went to go visit her, and it was like kind of a big trip for me, in the scheme of things, because it was like the first time I had ever smoked out of a bong, and I got really, really, really high, and it was also, like a big. I flew alone, from Tennessee all the way to Hawaii, and as in sophomore in high school. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of big experiences, a lot of new things, and for a while I thought like, oh, this is what like spring breaks are gonna be crazy. This is what they are, and kind of thoughts like that. But since then, every spring break, it's always much more tame than I'm expecting. And it's kind of like a weird thing. I'm always expecting, like every time spring break happens, an unusual situation for me is this is my 6th spring break. Normally, everybody else just gets 4. But I had an extra 2, and so I've had this concept that like this spring break should be crazy for me. And I talked about in the last video, I was going to go around this different kind of areas in the southeast, like Appalachian region, and I was going to be making different photos, videos, traveling around and going and staying at these rest stops, and it just kind of adventuring like that. And I was going to make this video to let everybody know, documenting all these travels, all the different places I was. And I did go to different places, but it just kind of made more sense not to make it like a big camping thing. So there's the place that I live and there's the place my parents live. And they're both, regionally in the same place, but they're in different places locally, I guess you could say. And so for that part of, there's you can kind of split the region that I'm photographing up into 2 different areas. I live on one side, my parents live on the other. So I stayed at my parents' house for a little bit when I went to go photograph things over there, and now I'm over back where I am, and I'm gonna photograph the next couple of days the places that are over here. And basically, I would have just been sleeping in the car in rest areas, doing things like in rest areas that were well within driving distance of home. Like it would get nighttime in time where like I couldn't make photographs because of the daylight anymore. And so that happens at let's just say for rounding, 8 o'clock you got to be done shooting. It's little got to be done a little bit before then, but let's say 8 o'clock you got to be completely done. So like 8:30, you're in the rest area. By 9 o'clock, maybe you've eaten dinner and chilled out and everything, and you're ready to just like hang out. It's like now 9:30, and say like now you've got nothing to do left. Like now it's just like watch a movie and chill out time, and wait till you go to bed. If say that's at like 9:30, well, I could be I could be home well before 9:30, at all these places, and be sleeping in an actual bed, and and so it's kind of like an interesting thing to think about. So I really wanted to make it like some sort of road trip, some sort of staying in rest areas and eating, SpaghettiOs and canned food and MREs and things like that. And I really wanted to have that. Like I thought it would be a really fun experience. Except I didn't do it, and it just kind of seemed to be silly. And so because of that, I didn't do it. And I was kind of thinking about spring breaks in general. And thinking about like, oh, these should be fun and exciting, but I think they're just not. And for a while I was just like, yeah, not everything is like a crazy experience. Not everything is something wild. That just kind of like, maybe that's just kind of what happens when you, I guess, like grow up. And I was like, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. And now I began to think about that and think on that. And that just didn't sit with me right. I didn't like the way that I was thinking about that. I didn't like the way that I experienced that. And I kind of don't like the way that to like set that up in my life is that I've kind of taken a different, path in life compared to most people. I kind of, I went to art school and, I've, decided to, make a go at being a professional artist and living and working based on the things that you create, which is a lot different than just like the kind of standard job approach that everybody else takes. Part of that is you're working for yourself and you're not showing up at work for somebody else. And so that can like make people frustrated and angry, I think. And so I think part of me, when I feel myself having these regular kind of experiences like this, that makes me think like, oh, I need to change that, because that was the whole, the whole reason is not to be, to have these regular types of experiences, to have these regular types of life. And so that's something I think I need to change about. I think that says something about maybe the current work I'm making, maybe the current thing that I'm doing, or at least the current way that I'm going about making this different work, or going about making the work in general, if that's how I'm kind of feeling. And so I'm going to think about reflect on that as as far as the project goes. But like at a certain point, I do have like this feeling of not all of it is what I think it should be, so to say. And so I'm going back and forth in my head about like, oh, well, what is right? Is it right to say, like, oh no, you should be having, this should be more of a crazy experience, as opposed to, something more manageable and regular, and not always like incredibly exciting. And so it's like something I'm kind of thinking about as I'm making this stuff, because like my work isn't always humorous. It is a lot of some of the time it's very humorous. I definitely would say people like expect my classmates and things like that, they expect my work to be humorous just based on personality. And so I think that that's kind of like an interesting like expectation to have. It's not necessarily an expectation that necessarily even reigns true. I don't necessarily think that everything I do has to be like funny or anything like that. And so it's interesting to me to wonder how much influence that feeling should play, based upon kind of what I'm feeling. But I don't know. It's something interesting, and I feel like that does need a little bit of like reflection. I guess I think it's worth reflecting over. I guess is what I mean to say. But yeah. So yeah, I thought that was just kind of an update. About the other side of the spring break. I will be sharing I said I was going to be sharing like the documentation of this trip, and there was no like trip, like I said, to speak of too much, but there is documentation in terms of work. I have lots of work that I've made during this time, and so I'll be able to share that when when it's ready, when it's available. And a lot of the cool thing is it'll probably be in some sort of digital media format. And so, yeah, look out for all of that stuff. I appreciate everyone sticking around, listening, and see you next time.